Hello and welcome to Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and we have two very special guests today. I'm going to introduce my lovely co-host, Bethany.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back to the show, babe.
Super excited to be back.
So glad you're here. We have another awesome guest today that I am so glad that you met, and I know all the people you work with are super glad to know that you have met. So I'm going to have you introduce him now.
Awesome. Oh man, I don't even know where to begin. Today we have one of my absolute idols, heroes, if you will, creator of the Rossiter system, Richard Rossiter. He is a former rolfer and attributes some of his success in finding his way through his techniques to working with the rolfing system through Ida Rolf, as well as Dr. Jim Moore. He's in the Massage Hall of Fame, received the Purple Heart. Just a really, really incredible person. I could go on, but let's jump right in and let's meet Richard Rossiter.
Howdy, I'm Richard.
Thank you so much for being on today. Cannot wait to have this conversation. I know a lot of my clients are going to be super excited to hear from you. So my first question here is, can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you found your way into body work, your experience with different types of body work, and ultimately kind of how you created the Rossiter system?
Well, when I first started, I had no idea I was starting. I had been flying helicopters in Alaska for about 8 or 9 years. I came back from Vietnam and went back to college, and I spent about a year and a half, and I realized I did not like going back to college. I didn't care for the whole system of education at that point, and so I decided that I would try flying again. And so anyway, long story short, I ended up first in Honduras, and then I went to Alaska. And I flew in Alaska until 1982. And in 1983, I had been rolfed by a longtime rolfer. And he said, why don't you do this? And so I said, well, I really like getting it done. I don't know if I want to do it, but I ended up really liking it. And I decided that I would start the school. And anyway, I ended up going through the school in the fastest amount of time anybody had ever done it before. I just put my nose to the grindstone and went in there and finished up in 4 months. And anyway, from there, I ended up going to Texas for a short time. And then I went to Arkansas, where I stayed for 15 years in practice. And while I was there, I met Dr. Jim J. Moore, and we became friends, and he started giving me people to rolf. And when I started with him, it was, I was just doing straight rolfing on people. And then as, and he Dr. Moore was a neurosurgeon / neurologist, and he started sending me people that were these horrible basket cases. They had had multiple surgeries. They had had, all the things that you can imagine go wrong with the surgery. Anywhere from up to 10 surgeries per person.
Wow.
And so anyway, I asked him if I could start changing how I was working with people, because I had regular normal people that I was rolfing, and then I would have these basket cases that would come in. And what would happen is I would realize that I couldn't do a straight rolfing session on these people because there were so many things wrong with them that I had to change things. And so anyway, he allowed me to start changing how I worked on people. So it wasn't a 10 series. Sometimes it was 5, sometimes it was 20, sometimes it was 15. It was never the same. And I never did the same things on them. And I started taking all of the things that I had learned in rolfing, is set up as sessions. So, you typically work through rolfing as a series, and you do certain things in the 4th session, certain things in the 5th session, et cetera, et cetera.
Using your hands.
Yeah, and all of this was using my hands. Well, while I was doing all of this, of course, and the reason that I got into rolfing to begin with was that my shoulders had been severely dislocated, and then both shoulders were now feeling the effects of doing all of this rolfing. And so basically what I did was I started working on people on the floor. And how that all started was I was giving a seminar, and it was kind of funny because, I was giving a seminar to teach people how to do this. And I was going to teach them with my hands. And because a lot of people, they don't have massage tables or rolfing tables at home, so I was teaching this class on the floor. So I was in a hotel convention center, and I was teaching this class, and a person walked in who ducked to get in the room.
Uh-oh.
And he came in with his wife, and his wife couldn't have been 5 feet tall. And I looked at them, and I realized he was the one who was in pain. And I thought, there's no way this woman is going to be able to help her husband with those tiny little hands. And so I said, let me get the class set up so that everybody is working, and then let me come over and I'll work with you. And so I literally got everybody started. And then this woman, I said, okay, you're not going to use your hands. I'm going to have you use your feet. And so I started to teach her with feet. And one of the class students came over to me, looked down at what I was doing with them, and said, how come we can't do it that way? And I kind of looked at her, and I gave her kind of a side eye, and I thought, sure, why not? And literally from that moment on, I never taught with my hands again. I started teaching everybody with my feet. And right off the bat, that very class, my results quadrupled. They were the results that I was getting suddenly just massively increased in their efficacy. It was so much better.
That is
And
amazing.
it was pretty amazing. So
And
that's how I started.
so when you were comparing, so you've done plenty of work getting worked on and working on others in the rolfing method versus the Rossiter system that you created. Can you kind of talk about the differences between having 10 sessions that are spaced apart versus the shorter, more powerful and deep Rossiter session, which the client is blending the connective tissue and walking in between?
Well, it's a lot different. Rolfing was designed to cover the entire body, and so that when you got done with 10, you had gone basically everywhere, including up the noses of everybody. So what happens in Rossiter is you go after the issue. But when you're going after the issue, you are also integrating it into the rest of the body. You've got to integrate it into the rest of the body. Or what happens is if you do something local, let's just say it's a knee, if you only work on the knee and you don't include movement with the rest of the body, what happens is that the body reimposes its injured design back onto the knee. And so with rolfing, there was no real movement. There was tiny movements here and there, but there was no big or grand movements that you tried to integrate the connective tissue system with that knee into the rest of the body. And so, and my modality, of course, is simply and always has been only connective tissue. I never think in terms of muscles. I never think of working on muscles. If I mention a muscle when I'm working working on a client or in class, it's only to locate the connective tissue of that area. So it becomes very powerful when you add movement. If you don't add movement to anything that you're doing with a person, all you're doing is something that is local. And when it's just local, it never spreads to the rest of the body as a new pattern that you want the new pattern. You want your originally designed pattern in the whole body.
And there is a power I can speak to doing Rossiter on clients for the past 2 years and seeing so many different bodies coming in with so many different situations, not having hugely different anatomical structures, but different areas of pain. I can really say that there is such a difference in the response from the nervous system, almost like the tissue is so much more able to unravel itself when the client is choosing the movement and the client is choosing how much weight the practitioner is giving versus lay down on a massage table and bend and twist and crack me into a position that's going to take my pain away.
Right, because it's not initiated from inside. You have to initiate your change from inside. It cannot be done from outside. From the outside, I know where to go to make a change, but I have to be assisted by the client from the inside. If the client is not participating, he will not keep what it is you're trying to give him.
I love that. That's a great explanation. As far as along the same lines, with opioids and cortisone injections, can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. Whenever you're talking about a drug or an injection, especially injections, if you think about it, once you put that needle in and you start injecting that liquid just goes where it goes, and you can't control it other than the initial injection point. And so there's something out there called a cortisone pucker, and that cortisone pucker, because usually that's what they're giving is cortisone with some xylocaine, or they'll give some xylocaine or novocaine before they give the cortisone shot, and it comes under many guises. There's so many different names for the cortisone out there now. They try to get away from the name cortisone, so it might have a zone on it somewhere, and as soon as you see a zone on it, you know that it is a cortisone derivative. But what happens is in that area that the injection is put into, the area rots. It actually rots, and so what happens then is that the pain stops for a while because you've just rotted the area. So people that have hip pain, what happens is if they get enough shots in their hip, it will rot the head of the trochanter. And then once you've rotted the head of the trochanter, you're on your way to a new hip. And so that's how you'll get a hip replacement person. Is soon as you start injecting a cortisone into a hip, you know that person somewhere down the line is going to have a hip replacement, because what you've done is you've taken the blood supply out of the head of the trochanter, and in that whole connective tissue area there is not a lot of blood flow, and so any blood flow that you take away is going to diminish the ability of the hip to perform correctly.
So I think pain is given a really bad reputation, but it seems to be doing something really powerful and effective for the body. What's your take on pain and the pain response?
Well, think of it this way. Pain is telling you what's wrong. The last thing that you want to do are take drugs or a shot or something to take away the pain. The pain is trying to tell you something. And if it gets louder, what it's doing is it's saying you're not listening, and it's turning up the volume. And so you've got to change something in your life that you're not doing correctly. Now that could be running. You could be destroying your knees. I know a lot of runners out there that have knee replacements, and then they have hip replacements, but they're not listening to their body. They're trying to act 20 when they're 50, and you can't do it because the pain is trying to tell you something. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to quit, but you may have to change what you were doing. In other words, maybe you should walk trails instead of pounding on the pavement. Your body can't take pounding on the pavement. It wasn't designed to pound on pavement. It was designed to walk on trails, on natural things. We have lost the ability to get out there and be on trails. I shouldn't say we've lost the ability. We've lost the incentive to go do something like that. So when I see trail runners or walkers or bikers that are out there, I'm totally on their side, because I can see where when you're walking on concrete all the time, it is just simply not good for your joints. And that starts with your feet into your hips. It doesn't matter. Your low back, if you've got low back pain, if you're going to go for a walk in the grass. There's a way you walk that is natural, that is a walk in the grass that you can take from the grass and move it onto the sidewalk. And if you do it correctly, you will stop the pounding pain that you get from walking on the sidewalk.
I will never forget in my level 4 that I was fortunate enough to be able to do with you one-on-one. Two springs ago, you took me outside and you had me walk up and down the pavement with you, a lot of laps, and then you had me walk up and down the strip of grass for like what felt like 20 or 30 minutes. And the thought crossed my head, all right, this guy is absolutely nuts. We're just going to be out here all day long. But I have to be honest, it feels so different. And it's encouraged me to switch my footwear. I've gotten rid of all of my cushioned running shoes that were foot coffins, and I've switched over to pretty much all barefoot. And now anytime I notice any type of knee, hip issue, pain in my foot, anything that feels off in my body, I'll just step off this sidewalk and go right into the grass. And it does feel like you're marching, but man, it feels so much better. So I would love for you to speak to like poor footwear, bad footwear choices. I feel like most people these days are wearing foot coffins.
Yeah, footwear is boy, it's really individual. The best thing I can tell you is wear footwear that feels right in the grass. Don't, you're looking for, when you go for a walk, if you see me walking, usually you'll see me either walking out in the street or in the grass, never on a sidewalk. I just simply do not count sidewalks as a good place to walk. I'll walk in the street and I'll walk in the grass. And when you're in the grass, you're walking the way you were designed to walk. And you're walking on gravel, you're walking the way you were designed to walk. As soon as you start walking on concrete or in malls or things like that, you are walking differently. When you walk naturally, you lead with your knees. You take each step leading with your knee. And if you are walking on concrete or in malls, that what you end up doing is you lead with your toes. And when you lead with your toes, you can plan on having back pain, because you are not supposed to lead with your toes. You lead with your knees. Your knee is supposed to flip your foot out, and your foot is to flop down on on the ground. It was I got to tell you a quick story. I was staying with a friend of mine, and I didn't know. She said, "Well, you're staying actually at my parents' place." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, that'll be great." And so I went upstairs where her parents lived. She said that they were just leaving, but you're welcome to go up there and to hang out. And so I went up there, and this was for a advanced rolf training. And someone came out of a room, and I heard him walking. And when I heard him walking, he turned the corner, and I looked him in the face. I had never seen him before. And I said, "Where did you grow up?" And he looked at me, and he was absolutely surprised. And he said, "China." And I knew right there, this was an old timer. This was a guy who had been around since 1922 at the time. And what was cool was that he had never walked completely grown up. His parents were Methodist ministers, and he had grown up walking on dirt trails and little wooden bridges. And so he walked correctly, because I've got a bad foot and I can't walk quite the way I should be walking. And so I had never heard someone walk correctly until I heard him walk that day. And it was like this huge aha, because he had learned how to walk correctly, and he had carried it through his entire adult life.
And I imagine he did not suffer from a lot of pain.
No, he never had pain. Because he lifted and moved his legs the way he was designed to move. And that's why we have so much pain in this country. Low back pain is because we've never learned how to walk right. We
Very
just walk automatically.
I mean,
go ahead.
To be able to hear that is incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing, because it was a wooden floor, and he came in the other room, and I was excited, and it turned out as a fluke. It turned out I was looking at, and his name was John Huston, and I didn't know that was his name. I just saw all these books. This library. I was sitting in the library, and I was looking at all these books, and I thought, God, this guy is a John Huston fan, because I was so excited because I was 35, and throughout my entire college career, I was a history buff and major, and one of the things that I appreciated so much was religious history. And so there I am sitting there looking at these books, and I realized that it was John Huston himself that I was talking to, who had grown up in China and had written, he's written at least 20 books on religions of the world. So I was thrilled to be staying in John Huston's house.
Wow. That's
so cool. It was.
That's awesome. I'm so glad I'm around to be a fly on the wall for this conversation. Let's just take a quick break and come back right after this.
All right, so I'm going to dive right into my next kind of topic / question for you. So I tell a lot of my clients, it's the victims that do the crying out, never the criminals. I've had more situations than I can count of a client coming in to see me for maybe their first or second Rossiter session, and they have pain showing up, let's say, in their right hip. When I was newer at Rossiter sessions, I was a little bit less confident, and so I usually would go right to the area of pain. And since then, kind of learning more about the body and learning what these techniques do to help unravel the root cause of pain, I started to try to find, okay, based on where you're showing me the pain is, and me watching you move and walk and kind of hearing a little bit about your experience. What do you do when the pain is at its worst? What do you do to compensate around it? What makes it feel good? What makes it feel worse? I really found that I was able to go to a completely different area of their body and almost get a deeper and more powerful unraveling effect from the root original area that they came in with. Do you have any situations like this that you've experienced that stand out to you in your career?
Oh, many. Most people are unaware of how they compound their pain. Usually, and unless it is a fresh injury, within the last 24 to 48 hours, usually when you've got a pain that's somewhere in the body, it is a compensation for another pain that you put yourself through earlier. As an example, your right, let's say your right foot. I've always got something going on with my right foot. Okay. And if I don't treat my right foot right, I can get something in my left knee because I have compensated enough that I am starting to feel it in the other side of my body. And this can just weave its way up your body so that you are literally, you could have a left hip that could be hurting because you are favoring a knee, your other knee, not the same knee, but the opposite side. Because what we do is we tend to we don't want to necessarily go after that problem that we have. So what we do is we change up how we address that problem. Then, suddenly your knee doesn't hurt as much anymore. But now you're talking about something that has happened more recently, and it's your left hip instead of your right knee. I mean, all of these things tie together. And so a lot of times if a person comes in with a left hip that is going wrong with them, I will start on their right knee or I will start on their right foot. And I am going to get immediate changes out of that in their current issue, which is that left hip. And so, and they are shocked that I went to the right knee rather than to the left hip. And it's not a shock if you just follow how people compensate in their body. And so a lot of things, whenever I hear low right back, I know that they always stand on their left leg. What they have done is they've made the left side more powerful, and consequently, the right side is going to, excuse me, bitch. And so it's telling you that you're doing something wrong, but you might be trying to do something that is not good for the right side. Because as an example, if you keep having that right side pain in your low back, but it's your left hip, then you're looking at, say, sometimes people will get shots. Well, once they've put a shot in there, that shot is now contributing now to that low back, and it is no longer necessarily the left hip. And so now you've got multiple entry points into that issue, and it's because they got a shot. And here's the worst and the most difficult part of this, and that is that I'll say, "Did you get a shot?" Well, no. Well, what do you mean? Well, no. Well, it's been 5 years. See, the problem is that shot still killed that tissue. It still atrophied that tissue. You can feel a cortisone pucker 5, 10, 20 years later. It doesn't matter. You made your sides uneven. They're no longer balanced. And so by putting that shot in there, that you thought was going to be the cure-all because you were talked into it by a doctor who only needed 5 minutes to do that, popped up, that pops up with $300, and you're out of his hair. And you go home and your right lower back feels just fine. You might notice that hip a little bit, but the big one, the lightest one was the right low back. And so what happens then is 2 or 3 days later, it's back. You didn't take care of the problem. What you did was you tried to hide it. And whenever you're trying to hide the pain, you're going to end up with more, and you're going to end up with it being in new parts of your body. Let me give you an example of a person that may have an issue and they don't even know why they have the issue. Okay, so when you watch television at night, a lot of times, and this goes for men everywhere, they get the chief seat watching television. They get to watch the one that's straight on into the television. Okay, the wife sits over to the side on the couch and kind of tucked up underneath her with her legs off to one side, and she watches television, and quote, they're both comfortable. The problem is that now you've set up a side problem in the woman, that if she keeps going back to that spot every night, she is eventually going to have an issue that is going to be either right low back or left low back. It's just going to be something that is not going to feel right. But is he ever going to give up his seat in that chair? It's not about, so you've got to be able to change places so that you're both getting that feel from that couch, and that couch could be harming you because you're only laying on one side to watch television. And if the couch isn't perfectly squared off with the TV, or it dips in the middle, all of these things can make a difference in how you go about your next day. Maybe that one day that you decided to binge watch and you watched 6 hours, and by the time you got up, your left side was numb. Well, you paid the price, but you pay the price the second and third day out. I always tell people, it's not what you did today. I ask them about what they did yesterday or what they did the day before, because that's what you're paying for today, is what you did a few days ago. Not necessarily what you just did or how you just, end quote, injured yourself. There's a history in that body. And so when I get people going back to that television, a lot of times I tell them, go get a kitchen chair and point it directly at the television and use that, because that's going to at least give you some sense of balance.
You'll probably self-correct around that, slightly less comfortable, cushiony seat before the pain creeps in.
Yes. And I always hang from a bar. Get those hanging bars for a doorway that you do pull-ups on.
Yeah. So what is your reason for hanging?
To balance both sides equally. You'll find if you hang and you kind of lean to one side and lean to the other, you're going to find that there's a different amount of pain in one side than there is in the other. Balance them out so that you have equal amounts of pain on both sides. And then I would just recommend going for a walk. Get your 10,000 steps in.
That seems very easy for a lot of people.
Easy. Just leave the bar up. Just put it in every time you walk by it. Just hang from the bar a little bit, and you don't even have to hang your whole body weight. You just lean to one side while your arms are stretched over your head, so that you get a good front to back, side to side stretch. That way, all sides of you are basically balanced with each other.
I mean, I know of a guy who used to put a leg of an entire couch in his shoulder just to get a stretch.
Yes, he
That
did that.
that was one of your go-tos before you had people to step on you, right?
That was. I had a huge couch, and I would come home from rolfing, and my shoulders would be in such pain, and I'd go over to the couch, and it had a huge base foot, probably about 4 inches across. But I would lift up the corner of that couch, and I would put it in what's I call the hole in the shoulder, which is partially on the shoulder, and if you just put your hand in your armpit, then about where your thumb resides is basically where that would be, and literally that would get me out of pain.
Wow.
I don't think
Desperate
anybody's,
times.
yeah, has anybody ever used a couch like that before?
No, no, not even my cats. My cats would sit on the couch above me and look down at me.
That's
So, and
hilarious.
those were our 25-pound cats. So that's how we started.
That is great. I have another quick question. So you're talking
Sure.
about balance of the tissue in both sides, and obviously that's so important to keep people functioning properly and keep the right original space in their connective tissue. I don't know many people who don't have some amount of scar tissue somewhere. Can you talk about what scar tissue does as far as impeding on the nerves, what that might do for the pain response and that overall space in the body?
Yeah. Scar tissue is like super glue. You get scar tissue when you're cut open, when you're bruised heavily, or even it could be even lightly, but or if you're bumped, you're in an accident. Anytime that you have basically jostled the body in some way, you're
Tattoos?
going to yeah, tattoos would do it too. Tattoos would do it too. But the idea is that what happens is that because it's super glue, it's not elastic like the connective tissue. Okay, it is like something that is solid, and so it's like if you've had, I don't know if you've ever had your appendix out, or you've had any female surgeries where they're working on the uterus or anything like that. No woman stands straight up and goes, "Oh, hallelujah." What happens is that they get out of bed and they're bent over, deep bent over, because it hurts so bad in that area. That is the scar tissue pulling on that area, and it extends down, it extends out. It's thickest where it was cut or injured the deepest, and then it just spreads out, because what your body is doing is it's saying, "Oh my God, I've got to save myself. I need this I need this scarring tissue," and it shoots it out. It creates it. And what happens then is that area of the body moves with restrictions. And unless you get the restrictions out, then you will create new restrictions in areas that don't even have the scar tissue. So you've got to be able to get that scar tissue worked out. And in Rossiter, we do that with all of our movement that we have. So it becomes just a part of the session, and people will feel that. I felt scar tissue in my knee from my surgery, my appendix surgery, for years after. But I didn't know that that's what it was until I disconnected it, you might say. I allowed it to stretch out the way it was designed.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I get asked all the time if Bethany just steps on me all day, and I tell most people, like, I can't afford her, so I don't get a lot of work done. But it was about 2 weeks ago that I started getting a pain down my right leg that I really couldn't explain, and it was really painful to even just walk. And I had Bethany do a few moves on me, and it really is incredible, like the process, and it doesn't make a ton of sense to me without going through it. How, her stepping on my left hamstring makes my right shin feel better. Like you guys talked about earlier, it's so amazing how creating space in certain areas of the body can cause chain reactions throughout the body.
Well, the big thing about that is if you, if and Bethany knows now from doing the work, but if you're in the right area, the pain stops immediately. And you get the first thing you'll always get is more freedom of movement, period. That boom, you automatically, as soon as you start doing Rossiter, first thing that will happen is you'll get your freedom of movement. You'll feel looser, lighter, and not restricted. The second thing that you get is the pain relief. And so that's why I always tell people, once you have done a Rossiter session, your session isn't really done until you've gone and you've walked a little ways. And I usually tell people to walk around the block before they get in their car. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're putting back the very same pattern that you came to me to get rid of. And I need you to balance your body out by going out and walking, so that we were designed to walk, period. That is what we were designed to do. We weren't designed to ride bikes. We weren't designed to climb trees. We were designed to be able to do those things, but not necessarily. But we were not designed specifically for that. We were designed specifically to walk, and to walk trails, and to hike, basically. And so the more natural setting that you can put yourself in after you have done a Rossiter session, the better you are off. So I always tell people, go walk in the grass.
It's all coming full circle. So people who are in pain, who might not have access to an immediate Rossiter coach, practitioner, they can hang, they can walk. Do you have any other immediate takeaways that they can start to implement right away so that they can help themselves out of pain?
Hanging, walking, stretching out on the floor, just flopping around, and find all those areas that are tight. Remember, whenever you're talking about pain, you're not talking about pain. That's not the first symptom. The first symptom usually is tension, and then it becomes tightness, and then it becomes something that you just don't kind of like in your body. You kind of avoid it if you can. You try not to, and then after that, once you're starting to avoid it, then it becomes pain, and that's when it starts sticking. And you've got to figure your way back out. So, in other words, if you walked into the kitchen and you are out of pain in the living room in a chair, you need to be able to walk from the kitchen back to the chair to be able to get yourself out of pain. So you have to figure out how to unwind what you just did to yourself.
I think that's really good information. Very helpful. Why don't we take another just brief break and come back here in a minute?
Sure.
Well, I could pretty much sit here and chat with you and come up with questions all day, but I want to make sure that we touch on two of your creations. The Rossiter Rewind cuffs, if that's the name you ended up landing on. I have gotten to use those on some of my extra lucky clients, and I'd also like to chat about Eve.
Sure. The cuffs we're not in the manufacturing stage yet. I've teamed up with the University of Wyoming here in Laramie, and what we're doing is we're redesigning them to make them much more powerful and easier to put on. We've got two ways that we can go with that. We can go with an air pump and we can go with a Velcro hook and loop way to do it. Those and those, and keep in mind, whenever you're using these Rossiter rewind cuffs, what it's doing is it's stretching large swaths of connective tissue. I mean, all I've ever done is work on connective tissue, and so that's what I'm doing with the Rossiter rewind cuffs. Eve is a full body. How would I put it? You literally get on Eve, and you are stretched in all three dimensions by working out on Eve. And it's a powerful tool because it only takes 40 to 50 seconds per side, and you're done, and you've pretty much stretched out your entire body. With the rewind cuffs, you do the cuffs. You can, depends on how many cuffs you have. If you have one cuff, then you might put it on your arm, your upper arm, and for your shoulder. Or if you've got carpal tunnel, you may put it on your forearm. If you got low back pain, you put it on your thigh, and you wrap it there. Or if you have, say, heel spurs or problems with your knees or your feet, you'll put it on your calf. So you can take care of it just the way you want. I mean, so in other words, if you have one cuff of this, you would just cuff yourself until you felt good. And if you had 2 or 3 cuffs, you could put them on one side of your body and then compare it to the other side. And that's another thing that I love about Rossiter is I always tell people compare. Don't just do it. Make sure that you've done one side. We've all got 2 sides, whether it's front and back or left and right. We've all got 2 sides, and we can compare, and so we can see what we've done to ourselves with Eve, and we can do that with the cuffs. And as far as I'm concerned, you do it whenever you're with a client and you have them get up and you have them walk around. What you're getting them up to do is to get them up to compare what has changed. So I always ask people, what happened? I don't want to say, isn't that better, or isn't that good, or are you happy with that, or anything like that, because what you do is you spoil what the naked results are. You don't want to tell them this is good or put it in their mind. What you want to know is raw data. Is it better? Is it lighter? Is it heavier? Does it feel smoother? Does it feel rougher? Is it gone? Is it still there? Did it amplify? Did it not amplify? All of those things are very important to know where to go next, because you don't want them giving you a bunch of attaboys or attagirls for a particular problem. What you want to do is get accurate information so you know where to go next.
It is really wild in my experience to meet with so many people who, on so many levels, a lot of times through medication, are so disconnected from what anything feels like inside. When I get that deer in headlights look when they come back from their walk and I ask what happened, and they have no idea how they feel because they've either been stuck in that pain pattern or they're completely not in tune anymore.
Exactly. Then, and they've lost touch with their body. And quite honestly, men are much worse than women. They don't get the feeling part of their body. They a lot of times they don't want to acknowledge that there's pain somewhere,
Right.
or and so what they so that's why it's important to watch your clients. So that when they get up, did they get up easier this time? Did they get up with their other leg? Did they get up with the bad leg? Did they get up with the right arm or the left arm? How does that arm feel now? All of those things now. Anytime you can ask what happened, that's your most accurate information that you're going to get from that person. Now, I always give them both sides of it. If I ask them if it's smoother, is it rougher? Can you raise your hand higher, or doesn't it raise high as you did before? When you take a step, is there pain in your knee? Is it worse? Is it better? Just anything that revolves around what happened and not, isn't that great?
I love that. And one of the last things I want to touch on with you is I hear this often, and it's really difficult to educate somebody to the point of almost talking them out of taking hot baths, using heating packs. I would like to talk about how temperature and different type of temperature changes can affect either positively or negatively our connective tissue.
Yeah, good one. Temperature is a huge one. I personally like to take a hot shower, but I always end in ice cold. Okay. I never take a bath. I don't want to take a bath. And for a lot of women who have fibromyalgia, how the fibromyalgia started was with a too hot of a bath or laying on a heating pad. And one of the things about heating pads is that they're so nice and comfortable that people fall asleep on them. And when you do that, you melt the connective tissue. Remember, connective tissue is made out of two things, plastin and elastin. Now, they've changed the books since I've been out here, but way back in the 70s and 80s, they talked about plastin and elastin. Well, as soon as you think about plastin and elastin, you think of plastic and elastic. Well, that's pretty accurate as far as cartilage and connective tissue and tendons and all of that. It's all those things in various combinations. In cartilage, you have a lot more plastin. In tendons and the smaller aspects of the muscles, there's the epimysium, the paramysium, the endomysium. All of those are like pure elastin. And so what happens then is you melt that and you change its dynamic with itself. Okay? And so when you lay, and typically what will happen is a person will lay on a heating pad or on the tub, in the tub. And if you think of that sacrum as what everybody is laying on, and if there's anywhere from an inch to a 2-inch pad of connective tissue, and that reaches out into every area of the body. And when it reaches out into every area of the body, what's happening is that if you melt that big, huge chunk, then it's going to change how it relates everywhere else in the body. And that's where you get these mystical, weird, I don't know, my arm just started hurting. And then they'll talk about, and it shifted into my back. And you start getting this fibromyalgia, and that's what it's from. It's from doing something that you were not supposed to do. And the only way to get out of that is to be able to bring your body back and literally, I always say, you've got to walk it. You've got to walk it and bring it back so that it brings the tissue back to where it was designed to be. As soon as you move that tissue, even a 1/4 inch from laying on it, think of what it's doing, pulling on your arm or on your chest or in your tummy. That connective tissue piece that's so huge around your sacrum was designed for women to help them get bigger when they make a baby. It comes around front, that all that connective tissue stretches out around front, all the way to the belly button, so that what you're doing is you're using all of that connective tissue to make room for a baby. And when your tissue is in that extended state, if you were to lie on a heating pad or lie down deep in a tub, and keep in mind, women do this a lot of times with, turning the knob, a hot water knob, to get more hot water in, while they're reading a book or something like that. And what will happen with that is that you change that connective tissue system. It's a system. It's your whole body, and that's where you get that I forget what they call it now. It's a CMRF or something like that. But it's pain in all areas of your body. And it's just kind of mystical, and it changes. It shifts from your arm to your other arm to your leg. All of that is from doing something like that. And there is no pill for it. The only way that you could ever get rid of it is through walking and doing yoga and things like that. So basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to put your connective tissue back where it belongs.
So interesting. A lot of that stuff I did not know. This conversation has been absolutely fascinating. But in all seriousness, I want to thank you for all of the time and energy and probably trialing and erroring and just everything you went through personally to develop this method. Not only has it helped all of the people that I've been able to reach and step on in the last few years, but it's really made me wake up every day and look forward to my day. And I truly feel like I've found my purpose in helping people in such an immediate and deep and powerful way regain their life back. It's absolutely awesome. And I just really want to thank you for that.
Well, then thank you for doing it. I appreciate that you're out there and you're putting this out there, and people are getting their own ahas because you invested the time to be able to learn it. So I'm very happy to have had you as a student.
Thank you so much, Richard. We really appreciate your time today. If there's anything else that you want to mention before we wrap up here, feel free. Otherwise, this has been such an awesome conversation.
You bet. We'll come back. We'll visit, and maybe you'll have some more questions, and I'll help you out.
Oh yeah, if we can rope you back into another one of these, you are signed on.
Yeah, this has been so helpful. I really learned a lot as well. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Thank you both for everything you do. I'm really grateful for both of you and all the hard work and help that you bring to people.
You bet. You take care, and I will see you around.
Likewise.
Thanks so much, Richard.
And thank you for listening to another episode of Boundless Body Radio.